Hey folks, Todd here. Today we're going to install the Husky DRT Fender Flares on the Ram 2500. The tools I'll be using for this installation are a ratchet with an 8mm socket, a Phillips head screwdriver, a pick tool, and a pair of scissors. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is prep all of our Fender Flares. Now, I do want to point out on the inside of the Fender Flares, you're going to have a sticker that gives you a location of each of those flares. You want to dry fit everything, make sure everything looks like it's going to fit on nice and well. Make sure your holes line up with your factory holes that are there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and attach our gasket material to the inside of the fender flare. Now what that's going to do is that's going to keep this edge of the fender flare from rubbing up against your paint. It's going to protect your paint. So let me show you how it goes on. First of all, because this does have an adhesive, you've got some automotive grade adhesive on there, we need to first clean off the inside edge where this is going to stick. So you'll see the red back adhesive that's going to go on like so. So the inside lip of this area here needs to be cleaned off. We're going to use some isopropyl alcohol. I've used 91%. The higher the percentage, the better it does a job of cleaning. So we're just going to take that and run that on the inside edge. And what that does is that just kind of removes any kind of residue that might be there from the thermoforming or any kind of dust that got on there. Removes that. You just want to make sure it comes off clean. And we'll give that a little bit of time to just kind of dry up real quick. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our strip here. We're going to pull some out. You're going to have a bundle that will do all 4 of your flares. So what we're going to do is first just kind of set that in place. All right, and then what we'll do is peel away a couple of inches of that vinyl protectant. All right, where it's just like so. And now what we're going to do, I like to kind of squeeze this apart to where it spreads it apart and then go over top of the edge of the flare. So we're going to squeeze and set it in place. All right, now that it's in place, what I'm going to do is apply some pressure and get that adhered. Next, what I'm going to do is we're going to work about 6 inches at a time. So I'm going to set this kind of in place where you squeeze and set it down in. Now that's set in place, I'm going to go ahead and peel back some of the vinyl backing and press that into place. And then go a few more inches. And we're just going to work our way all the way to the other end of the flare. And I do want to point out, I've got a little bit of a bump of a profile that's going to go into one of the body lines on the truck. So I'm going to make sure I work around that as I go kind of over top of it. It's going to kind of bump up right here. So I'm going to kind of hold it down on both sides, pull my tape, and make sure that I get a good bond where it kind of rides that bump real well. Okay, now when we get to the end, what we're going to do is go ahead and set it in place, see where it ends to, and then we're going to cut that in place with a pair of scissors. And then we can go ahead and finish it off. All right, now repeat the same process on the other 3 flares. Okay, now I am starting off on the passenger side at the front wheel well on the back side of that front wheel well. Now, I want to point out our truck is not stock. So there actually used to be a factory mud flap that was right here. We've already removed it, but the hardware is still there. So there is a bolt that's right here and a bolt down here on the bottom. This bolt that's here, that gets covered up by the mud flap, and we're actually just going to leave that bolt in, but we're going to remove this one and that one. And if you've got the factory mud flap, you're going to go ahead and remove that mud flap as well. But we're going to retain these 2 bolts because we're going to use them for reinstalling our fender flare. Now, you're going to use an 8mm socket to pull those out, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, now as we move up along the fender, we're going to find another bolt here and a bolt here. Both of those are going to come out. As we move along, we're going to have one more bolt here and one all the way over here. All 4 of those bolts are going to come out to be reinstalled with the fender flare. We're going to take them out with an 8mm. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and grab our flare. We're gonna hold it up in place, line up the holes in the flares with the holes from the factory, and then we're gonna put each one of those bolts back in place, just hand tight. We're not gonna tighten anything down until we've got everything lined up. Then we're gonna go ahead and tighten everything down with that same 8mm as we're bearing down up against the side of the truck with the flare. That's gonna keep it pressed nice and tight up against the truck as everything tightens down. All right, now we can go ahead and move to the rear. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and focus on the rear fender well. Now, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look up here at the top. There's gonna be a hole up at the top of the rear fender well right in the center. That hole, we're actually going to be putting some threads behind it. So in your kit, you're gonna have a little black piece of, basically a little piece of plastic that's adhesive. And what we're gonna do, I've already got some alcohol on this cloth here, so we're going to wipe that down on the top and the bottom. We're going to take and place that over top of the hole, and then we're going to bend it and go back over the other side of the hole. Feel where the hole is. We're going to take and poke a little hole into it. And next in our kit, we're going to have a clip that has a hole on one side, and it's got kind of a little bent piece over here that allows for threads on the other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide that clip over top of that hole. All right, we also have a screw that comes in the kit that's going to go through that hole. So temporarily, I'm going to go ahead and run it through the hole, make sure everything lines up properly. All right, now I'm going to leave that in there for right now. We're going to pull it out in just a minute. But for right now, I also want to draw your attention to some bolts that are in here. Now, some applications will have some trim pieces that might actually get in the way of the fitment. So whenever you dry fit it, if it's kind of moving around some trim pieces, those trim pieces have to be removed. That's already been removed from this truck. So we had a piece that was right down here, came up a little bit, and a piece on the front that had to be removed. Next, what we're going to do is going to remove these 2 bolts here, and then we're going to skip that bolt and remove this one. Same on this side, remove these 2 bolts, skip that bolt, and remove that one. We're going to retain all of those bolts to install our new fender flare, so we're going to set them off to the side. We're going to pull those out, again using an 8mm. All right, now we're going to go ahead and remove this screw with a Phillips head screwdriver, and this is actually what I'm going to start with when we line up our fender flare. So we're going to line up the fender flare, start this screw first, and that's going to kind of hold it in place. We're not going to tighten it down until we've got everything lined up, but then we'll put the factory screws back through the fender flare, again using kind of the same technique that we did before, kind of going at an angle, kind of bending in, and then getting this started. But again, we're not going to tighten down anything until we got everything lined up. All right. Okay, now I've got everything lined up, so we're gonna go ahead and tighten everything up. All the factory hardware, of course, we're using that 8mm socket, and this screw up here, we're gonna use a Phillips head screwdriver. I'm gonna start with this side and just kind of work my way all the way around. And as I tighten it down, I'll bear into the flare just a little bit, make sure everything gets nice and snug. All right, now go ahead and repeat the same process for the opposite side. Well, that concludes the installation. If you have any questions, call the experts or visit us online.